Marriage seems to be one of the most important social institutions in the world, but at the same time, the marriage rate among many races is declining while the divorce rate is continuously increasing. One group of people that aren't often mentioned when it comes to divorce is the Muslims. The Muslim community isn't immune to divorce. In fact, it is allowed in their religion, it just isn't often discussed. A Rutgers alumnus, Suzy Ismail, is here with me today to discuss the book she wrote titled When Muslim Marriage Fails. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for taking some time out to come and talk about your book with us.
It's good to be back at Rutgers. Right.
Now, what topics are discussed in your book?
Well, the way that I set up the book was that I looked at different cases of people who have had problems in their marriages that ultimately ended up in divorce. And in exploring the different cases, I looked at many different cases. I kind of compiled them into an amalgamation of different stories with the different characteristics from each case that I looked at. The funny thing is that when I was doing the research for this book, I just found a lot of these stories, they have common threads. In almost all of them, it was like communication was a big issue. Just the couples didn't communicate to each other. They didn't tell each other what they wanted. And not over, a week or two, but over years and years. And the lack of communication tended to fester and grow into almost resentment by the end of their marriages.
So how do you think these issues in divorce can be prevented?
Well, I touched upon it previously, the topic of communication and how important it is to communicate openly and freely with your spouse or with anyone actually that you're in a relationship in. Whether you communicate with your children or with your parents or with your friends, just keeping those open lines is very important. And I think prior to going into the relationship, I think it's important to understand that the romanticized ideal of marriage, this Hollywood notion that, the perfect couple, doesn't really exist. Marriage requires work, as any relationship requires, and entering a marriage knowing that you're going to have to deal with little issues like, your spouse's bad morning breath or, waking up with your hair all messy or your makeup not done, and accepting that it's not going to be perfection. And I think realizing that, marriage, when you enter that marriage bond, most people enter it with the intention, with the hopes that it will be forever, but it's going to take work to make it stay forever. So I believe all those things together go hand in hand.
Why isn't divorce often discussed in Muslim marriages?
That's a good question. To begin with, the concept of marriage in the Muslim culture is not only a union between two people, but it's really a connection of two families. The Muslim culture is very collectivistic in nature, and so people, when they marry, they really form a bond, and it's this bond between aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, friends, and it's the whole package comes together. So when a couple decides to divorce, it usually has kind of a domino effect. It's not only a separation of two people, but it's really a separation of two entire families. So that's the first point, I believe. And also there's kind of a feeling of, if a marriage doesn't work out or there's a breakup, what's the community going to think of me? What's the, society going to think of me? It's kind of like a feeling like you didn't succeed at something, basically. And I think that a lot of times, withholds people or keeps them back from talking about any marital problems that they might be having, or if their marriage is on the brinks of being dissolved, they're afraid to kind of bring it up.
Where can students go to find out more information about your book or any of your other work?
Well, the book is available on Amazon. It's also available in the Kindle edition now if you want to purchase it that way. You can also go to my website, which is www.suzyismail.webs.com.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your information.
Thank you.
With us. As you can see, non-Muslim marriages aren't the only marriages falling apart across the world. Each chapter in Suzy's book outlines relevant and common issues for married and divorced couples today. For more information on her book or any of her other work, you can visit www.suzyismail.webs.com. For RUTV, I'm Tiffany Hill.